Hello everyone and welcome to Cappuccino with HR. My name is Rudi Bauer, and after 40 years in business, I'm 100% sure that the success of companies is directly related to the passion of the people working for these companies. With the Cappuccino of HR, we created a format where we really invite people. It's HR leaders, it's recruiters, it's talent acquisition guys, and we're talking about all the different kind of topics. And the range is going from AI, of course, to new work, to leadership, and all the challenges along the way. Yeah, hello and good afternoon for another episode of Cappuccino with HR. And today I'm really delighted to have my dear colleague Daniel with us, Daniel Cranney.
Hello.
He's the developer advocate at WeAreDevelopers, and I think that's a really cool binding element within bringing our community together with what I normally do, taking care about the HR side, taking care about the business side. And I'm really delighted to have you with us. And we're talking today, we are talking about bridging code and culture. I think it's a nice title. I think it was the basic idea of WeAreDevelopers when WeAreDevelopers was founded was to bridge the gap between companies out there looking for talents, trying to also market their solutions to the community of developers. And this works with some translation, which is necessary along the way. And developer relations advocates and guys in our organization are more the translators. I always call them the Google translators for really bridging the gap. So Daniel, thank you very much for your time and really welcome.
Hello. Thanks for having me. Just to say, first of all, I'm really excited to do this. I think it's something that it's a topic hopefully people can learn a lot about and they can then use in their companies. And it's also good to, for me, when you're saying bridging the gap, for anybody that watches the WeAreDevelopers content, you probably see me on it a lot of the time. It's my face up front, and sorry about that. But it's also, it's nice to bridge the gap and actually be on your show. So it's nice to flip that back at you. Looking forward to it.
I just think it's also a premiere, so we never did this in a kind of way. We did a very similar kind of format a couple of months ago with Hung Lee, the guy from Recruiting Brain Food, where we put one developer and one recruiter together in our show, where we asked them really what's going on each on the other side. And this was really interesting because even that people are daily in their business and that think they do the right things right, the other side often interpreted it in a totally different way. But before we start, then may I ask you to briefly introduce yourself in a few sentences?
My name's Daniel Cranney and I'm from the UK. I can actually say for once, sunny old England. Usually that's ironic because it rains so much, but it's actually sunny today. So that's really nice. I'm a developer advocate here at WeAreDevelopers. I'm a former filmmaking lecturer and designer. And before that, I was in a band. So I've done a lot of different things. So we'll get into it a little bit later on, but I think that's very much what's prepared me to kind of do the job of developer relations. That, having done multiple different things means you feel you can bring together some of those different parts of the company and of the organization and people with different skills. So we'll get into that in a little bit, but that's sort of briefly who I am. And and now that's what I've been at WeAreDevelopers now for a year and 2 months, and it's my first role in developer relations. And I suppose what you would call an indie builder, and I build my own tools on the side. I've always kind of made websites, and so that's kind of who I am, really.
Very cool. Thanks for that. And as the format is called Cappuccino with HR, I have to ask you this question as well, because I always do it. What is your favorite coffee?
Well, I know I would annoy every single one of our Italian developers in the community if I said cappuccino, because it's about 4 o'clock in the afternoon here. So I've gone for a flat white, which, I should say, flat white. I keep it simple. I usually like an espresso though, first thing in the morning, I'm tired. I've got a young kid. I have an espresso, wakes me up, gets me going for the day. I need it. So I'd say an espresso or a flat white.
Okay, thanks for that. Then, as probably not every organization out there and every organization out in our target audience is used to the definition of developer relations, or DevRel, which is the short form. How could you quickly explain it? What's meant with it? What does it mean in the tech world?
It's kind of $1 million question in that there's a lot of debate, I think, about what it means. And I'll leave the kind of authoritative definition to our VP of DevRel, Chris, because Chris Harman actually wrote the book on DevRel, right? So I think that's somebody who could maybe give you that really concrete definition, but I'll give you my interpretation of what it is. I think developer relations in like a very simple kind of diagram, I suppose, is if you had the company on one side, that company usually making software or offering something to developers, and on the other side, the users of that software or that tool, who in this case probably are developers. And then you are the person in the middle, in between those two. Now, it's not to say it's always individuals that those companies are targeting with their software. They're obviously going for enterprise level. Essentially they'll be going for enterprise level because it's going to help the business survive, right? But at the same time, you're creating content for that the people that work within those other organizations to better understand how your tool or your software or your application could help them as a developer in their day-to-day life. And yeah, so I think it's primarily is that person that translates. You said that word earlier on, translates. It translates the technicals, because you need to be able to communicate to the developers that are using your software the technicals of it, because they are going to ask you about it. They're going to want to know the specifics. And if you just have somebody in sales, no, not disparaging somebody in sales, but they're often not going to be able to answer those questions. So the DevRel can step in and speak on behalf of the technical side, but also just in simple terms, how is this going to solve a problem for that developer, using this software or using this tool? So I think you're very much the middleman. You're the person who's feeding information both ways. I think you're feeding information to the developers about, look what our tool can do. Look at this exciting new feature. Look what we've got that's really useful for you. And then on the other side, you're able to feed things back. Excuse me, that's quite hard to say. Feed things back to the company in saying, this is how developers feel about your software. This is the feature that they like. This is what they don't like. And there's a lot more to it than that. But finally, I know it's a long definition, and this is what I mean, right? There's really no consensus about what it is. I think in some level you are a representative. You're a rep in that sense, that you are somebody who is representing a brand or an organization, and you're helping to communicate the values of that organization outwardly to some of the people that will be your customers ultimately. And so you're putting a face to what could be a faceless brand.
What drew you personally into this role? What was the attracting part for you when you were first kind in touch with us, looking for this kind of developer advocate? What was it for you that created this kind of curiosity around it and your interest?
I think I saw them in the community. I saw developer relations or developer advocates on social media, and I would see them, exciting me about different tools. And it wasn't immediately obvious to me that they existed. They seemed just like people that were excited about certain tools or software. And it was only over time that I saw, oh, right, these are actually developers who work for the company and they help to do this. It didn't undermine it, though. It didn't make me think, well, they're paid ambassadors. That's okay. That's a good thing. It wasn't like they were just being paid to make content. It was that they were people who were excited about some software or excited about something developer related, and then they wanted to communicate that to other people. And I liked the fact that it really allowed me to put together lots of different skills. I would call myself a proud generalist, in that I like doing lots of different things, and it's taken me years to really realize that that's okay, and I like doing lots of different things in a given day or in a given week. So DevRel allows you to do that. You're not just coding all day. You're not just making video content all day. You're not just writing blogs. You're not just doing outreach. You're doing a bit of it every single day, and I really like that mix. And as you can tell, I like to talk, and so that's definitely a skill as working in DevRel, being able to talk, liking talking about things that you're excited about. So for me, it was the perfect blend of all of those things.
If a company is having a kind of a DevRel organization, a part organization in their team, how could they use that for breaching also? I mean, what you described was mainly a kind of getting a kind of audience for products or features or a kind of cool stuff which is built by these guys in the developer teams. But how could it be leveraged also for HR? because I mean, there's misconception, a lot of misconceptions still out there. I mean, when I started a couple of years ago, I mean, there was this kind of stereotype which was definitely out there. Software developers are dressed in black, they're sitting in the basement and they're eating pizza. I mean, that was more or less the summary of the stereotype. Every study that we did along the way proved that it's 100% wrong. So it's totally the opposite. And I mean, but if a stereotype is placed in the market, it stays there for quite some long time. Yeah, if you have a DevRel organization or if you have DevRel people in your team, how could they help and support HR for attracting talent out there with getting rid of misconceptions, getting rid of all these misunderstandings?
I think that the idea that developers don't want to speak to people in the community and they don't want to engage with other people, it's a stereotype, as you said. It's in general, it's not true. And I think that you will realize that with developers, when they're passionate about something, they're extremely passionate about it, to the point where, you know, they will do their day job, and often on the side, their hobby in some form is programming related, right? Now that's like a gift for so many HR departments who would love these motivated people to be in their teams. Now with DevRel, you're able to actually find those people in the community. There's a few very large, you know, tech brands that I can think of that I've seen personally, with people that just, you know, you would speak to them on social media, they create content related to a product, and then within a few years, the people within that company who make that product start saying, well, you know, you obviously are somebody who really likes our work. They engage with the developer relations representatives, so the developer advocates, and then that community is built between the company and the developers, who the developer advocate has seen this person is qualified for the job. I'm not saying they'll do the role of the HR, but what they're able to do is at least prepare somebody for the HR department if interviewing comes along, if an application comes in from that person, in terms of saying, this is the background, this is the kinds of work that they're doing with our tool or with our software already. And then you're helping to select and find these developers that are in the community, that are speaking to people. They're not hiding under a bridge like the stereotype would suggest. They're out there telling people, I love this product. So it's about recognizing that, and the developer advocate can do that.
Mm. And I mean, as I mean, that's fact, and it's proven daily that 90% of the software developers out there have their job. I mean, they're currently not looking for jobs. So we call them internally, we call them passive candidates. I think the market calls them probably passive candidates as well. And I think that was also one of the basic founding ideas of WeAreDevelopers when we started, where the company was founded and started to get access and to build up a community, getting access to passive candidates on one hand, and having the chance to market products there, but also kind of stay in contact. Because I think that's a big difference to probably generalistic job boards, that a job board is interesting for you if you're really looking for a job. I mean, as the average European is changing jobs every 5 to 7 years, probably. I mean, we don't know if it's still the average. It was the average for quite some long time. It means in the times in between, all the job boards are not really interesting for you, because if you're not looking for a job, why should you go on a job board? And I think the idea of WeAreDevelopers was to build a community. What for you makes a community a good community? What does it need to build up a good community? And the second question, which probably could put additionally onto it, is how could companies use communities for their needs?
I mean, I can actually speak first of all on I'm going to sound like just self-promoting the company almost, you know, in saying that the first community that real life community, if you like, that I joined was the WeAreDevelopers community, in that I came along to the World Congress. I volunteered to be a moderator. I got on stage. I was given that opportunity to get some experience of doing something in the tech community. But the biggest takeaway from that, that was amazing. But the biggest takeaway from that first visit to the World Congress was just meeting loads of people, and people with all kinds of different backgrounds and different roles in the tech industry, and different experiences and different stacks, that they use, the coding languages, the programming languages that they use. So I really felt like, there's loads of people out there like me, and they could help guide me. They could I can give you one thing that actually was one really important thing, and it's a short story, I suppose, but it was something that happened at the World Congress that I'll never forget. Louise Fries, who has spoken at the Congress a couple of times, I was sat with her watching somebody, and I said to her, I was moderating, and I said, how have I gotten here where I'm on stage and I'm being allowed to go and moderate and bring these people up? I'm a fraud. I was having imposter syndrome. I'm a fraud. Like I'm not a real developer. I just make things and put them on the internet. And she said to me, well, you develop, right? You develop things and you put them out there, so you're a developer. And she said, you've got just as much of a right to be in this community as anybody else, and in this room as anybody else. And I think that was really important, to hear. So it was a part of seeing that for me, it was actually a little bit of validation in somebody saying, join this community, and people aren't going to judge you for your skills. They're going to help you develop them. And I think that was something that was really important for me.
Mm-hmm. And the second thing is, I mean, how could companies leverage that being part of a community? And if they enter, because what I see, if I talk to companies, if I talk to HR people, if I talk to talent attraction people, they're heavily afraid of getting into these communities because they have exactly the same what you described now. Yeah. Having this kind of fear that they're not good enough for being part of it. How could DevRel probably help them to overcome this fear?
That's such an interesting thing for me to hear, because it's from the other side almost of saying, well, if I now feel like I'm a developer, then people on the other side not feeling like that, and they maybe aren't developers, but feeling like they can't even speak about it. It's kind of sad, right?
Yeah.
Because I think actually in reality, developers can be judgmental with the technicals, and I think the technical side of things, when I say judgmental, they can be pedantic to some degree, with the technical side of things. And sometimes the difficulty is having a conversation about technical things with somebody who isn't technical and it making sense. So I think that I understand for the company, there's a little bit of you have to take a risk in some ways for your brand, because if you're going to engage in that community, then you're bringing on a member of staff who's going to be a developer advocate, and they're going to represent you, and they're going to be on Reddit, or they're going to be, in one of these Discord servers. And you, as a company, you feel it's away from your site, out of your control, and that they could do things that harm the brand. And I think there's trust that has to be put in the arms of the developer advocate to understand what that brand is, represent it well, and connect with the community. Who the final part of that, being in those communities and being authentic has so much currency. If you're in the Discord community servers and you're being honest about what you know and you don't know, and if you are there from a company, you're not trying to do the hard sell. I think that's really important. But if you're just in those communities, I would say, to my friends, I suppose, it's just being a person, nothing more, just being in that community because you're welcome, not trying to sell people things, being honest about what you know and what you don't know, but putting a little bit of trust in that developer advocate to be that person and do that. Then you'll really be able to leverage it, because you'll find the members of staff you're looking for, you'll find the users, you'll find all of them in that one place.
So that could also be a kind of I mean, within employer branding, I think we are just heavily talking about being authentic, not telling some kind of stories which are fluffy and shiny and shimmery. And I mean, in 2019, everybody wanted, with the employer branding stories, they wanted to be like Google, and everybody built a nice campus before pandemic showed up. And everybody wanted to have this stylish, new, wonderful, nice office. And so I think that was the trend back then. And what you described, I mean, of course, it has a lot to do with trust. And I think that's probably an issue for itself, because trusting people in representing the company in a way that is authentic and real is always a kind of a balance act as well. Because, I mean, if you go out and tell the people, okay, we are good in that, but we are not definitely not good in that aspect, I mean, of course, it's a danger in itself, but it has to do with trust. But do you think it could do a lot? I mean, this approach could do a lot for authentic employer branding?
Absolutely. I think that it's more than just putting a face to the brand. I think it is about showing that, if the brand makes a mistake, that's where there's a really good example. Is if the software, for example, I won't bring there was a specific brand recently, a tech brand, and they had they handled deployments. So basically putting your website online. and they had a big security issue. And I didn't look into the specifics of it, but essentially the security issue was overlooked for a little while and a lot of people were affected. Now, the developer relations team were the people who were helping to smooth over some of those issues. And what I really appreciated actually was that they didn't try and say, they didn't try and just focus actually on like, this is what we've done. It was, they were trying to explain how that issue had happened. And I felt that that was quite important because it was saying we're really going to take account for it. And we're going to be honest. We're going to open the doors and say, this is how it happened. This is what we did wrong, not just what happened as a result of us doing things wrong. And so I think that the employer branding was that they had a real risk there of losing a lot of customers. There were going to be a lot of people who just said the trust in this company is on shaky ground and I'll look for an alternative. So by them being just, by just being people, by being real people, responding and saying sorry, not having to be very corporate all the time. I can say for myself, I really, really don't respond well when I feel a company is very corporate. I feel it's stale. It's almost, it feels ChatGPT now. It does. It's at that point where it feels like you haven't even tried because those very corporate things didn't feel authentic. And now you feel like, well, that's the first thing you're going to get when you ask ChatGPT. You're going to get a corporate, inauthentic style. And it feels like a lot of the time when companies don't understand that authenticity, that's the kind of tone that they have. And that doesn't land well with people like myself and other developers, I think.
Mm-hmm. And if companies have the plan or start thinking, building up a kind of a developer relations team, and they have no idea how to start, what would be, from your point of view, the first 2-3 steps which are necessary to be taken by companies to set it up? And how complex is it? How many preparation is needed? Or is it just going to one of the senior developers and ask, do you want to be our developer advocate?
I mean, I wouldn't say just go and ask somebody. I think it's all about the execution and the planning of it, because one thing that's a shame is that over the years we've seen the DevRel departments, if you like, come and go. You know, there's companies that will hire a number of developer advocates very quickly and then they let them go because they're not sure what to do with them. And what I mean by that is the measurement, you know, the KPIs, it's the looking at what the value is that person brings. It's notoriously difficult with DevRel because some of these things are so implicit, you know, brand awareness, brand exposure. It's things like the impression that people have of your brand. It's just solving issues sometimes and speaking to people and saying, this is how to solve this issue, or this is the problem that this is the problem you're having and this is how to solve it. That translation part. Yeah. So I think it's a lot more than just going out there and just speaking to people randomly, right? It's that you first of all probably need to speak to your team. You need to speak to your users. Your team might be your users. If you're offering a tech tool or service or product, the people that work for you might be also using it, and they'll know better than a lot of people what the exciting features are about it. But the people that are really going to know what makes your software, makes your tool, makes your company exciting are the people that use those things. Speak to them first of all, because DevRel is trying to fulfill a need for them, and it's trying to fulfill a need for the company, knowing which direction to take the company, because they need to know what's going to go down well with developers. So it's about speaking to both of those and thinking, well, what's actually going to help us get there? Are you a company that needs a lot of video content? Are you somebody who needs a lot of documentation? Is that something where you think, yeah, the problems we're having and developers are telling us is when they encounter issues, they can't solve them even reading our official documentation? Well, that needs some time then. Is it that you need just that brand awareness, that brand exposure, really thinking about what the company actually needs? Then you can understand how the DevRels can help you get there, or the developer advocates can help you get there. And finally, on that piece you say, where it's, should we just go and find, should the company just go and find somebody who's a loud voice in the community? And I would say no, because it sounds terrible to say it, but you know, there's good and bad in everything. And I think there's people that will make a lot of noise, but when it comes down to doing the job, can they put all of those things together? Can they create content across different mediums? Can they go and speak for your company? Will they go into those communities and be a confident person speaking to them, and all the other skills that come with it? Will they go on stage for you? Will they write documentation? Will they write blogs? And so finding the right person is important. And I would say for some of those companies, look at generalists. And I am biased. I am biased with this, but look at generalists, because there's so much in so many industries, there's so much specialization, and DevRel is an odd one because it actually favors people who are generalists. And that's not saying someone who's bad at programming, although I probably am quite bad, but it's not saying that just somebody who's bad at programming and is half decent at going on stage, they don't have to just be half decent at everything. They're just people who've got a number of specialisms or different areas that they can do a good job for your company. And that's where DevRels, I think, really sit. So yeah.
Could that end up in thought leadership for some industries as well? Because I mean, a lot of companies are trying to get this kind of USP, and I think the best USP that you probably can get in every industry is being a thought leader. Because if you are ending up as a thought leader, I think you are definitely there, because then everybody's starting listening to you, because I mean, that's where the knowledge is then.
It's true.
If you make it right, could you end up with thought leadership as well as industry?
Yeah, I think that there's a thin line though between that thought leadership and influencer world. And I think that when you're looking at a developer advocate, there's some degree it's the how corporate are you, right? In that, you know, if you're somebody who's going to market with a lot of meme style marketing to developers, then you probably could work more alongside the influencer world. Whereas if you're more so a more corporate organization, then perhaps, you know, the more the thought leader route, I would say, is best to go down. Yeah.
What do you think is the biggest challenge in DevRel today? If you look on the world going on, when AI is all over the place, I mean, it's the discussion that AI will replace the software developer jobs anyhow. I mean, it's a big topic, big discussion topic. I think there's no conference where this topic is not discussed heavily. What do you think today is the biggest, in the aspect of developer relations, what is the biggest challenge today?
With things like AI, you know, when we're talking about in the future AI perhaps replacing developers, you could on the one hand say, well, is there any need for developer relations then if it's just going to be AI that's writing the code? I think that realistically, the tide is changing slightly, in that people are starting to realize it'll likely be that the role of developers changes, and it does become a little bit more about code reviewing and perhaps less writing the code. Now, for me, that doesn't really change anything, in the sense that the approach that you're taking, how you're getting there, writing the code, is changing. You're now using AI to get there, but the outcome is still that somebody who does have some technical knowledge, and it's not going to be that just anybody with no technical knowledge can now be a developer, or we don't need them at all, we can just rely on AI. I think there's going to be this subtle balance between all of it, where the role of development changes. Now, that does present some kind of challenges for DevRel, because it means you have to then adapt to what that role of being a developer is and trying to understand it. And I think that the opportunity, though, is that for people that are developers who are looking to extend sideways and say, could I do something else that's maybe not strictly full-time development? Developer relations actually is a great route they can go down, because as we move forward, I think that we'll have so much of AI maybe doing the coding that then the community, the human element, is important, because we will still need and we'll have maybe more time for those two, that community to sort of come into the foreground. So I think there's an opportunity more than challenges with DevRel, if I'm honest.
Sounds great. I want to come back, as the time is passing by quickly, and I want to just, as you are, I mean, you are in constant contact with our community, in constant contact with developers out there. And as we are having a kind of a podcast which is mainly meant for companies out there and HR departments, what kind of company culture resonates most with developers today? What do you think is important for developers? I mean, you're talking to them on a daily basis, you meet them regularly. You definitely get a kind of a lot of feedback from these guys as well. So what could you give as a kind of a final tip to companies if it comes to company culture, if it comes to work environments, if it comes to the indeed wishes and dreams of developers, what they're expecting from companies?
I think that for me, it goes back to some of the topics we've touched upon. I think authenticity is number one, you know, just being transparent as a culture generally, as an organization, how you speak to the developers, you know, what you expect from them in return, transparency, but also trust. I think trust is such an important thing. And the developers are often highly skilled, highly motivated. And as we said earlier, they're They're individuals who will go home and do the same thing or something similar to what they do in their day job, possibly. I'm not advocating it, but I'm saying it does happen. So do you need to why would you lack trust in those people? They're people that have got all the pieces that you need to do a good job. And so I think with that comes that flexibility. I think developers, since the pandemic, have more and more increasingly expected remote work, whilst at the same time, possibly for factors to do with commercial real estate, been pulling people back to the office. And I think developers really, in general, really do not like that, because at least in Europe, there is much more work-life balance, perhaps, than let's say North America. And I think that developers in Europe really value that work-life balance is slightly easier if they're working remotely, because why wouldn't you trust them? They're going to do a good job for you more often than not. And if you give them that trust, that will, I think, enhance the results you get from them. So I think that's what it boils down to. Trust that they're skilled people, they're skilled, knowledgeable, motivated people. Show them that you trust them and they'll return it. That's actually a coding joke as well. Return that, by the way. That's also by accident, the coding joke. So yeah.
I mean, I think that was the best closing word already, because I think trust the people. They are passionate and they are really doing all what they can for getting it right. I think that's a really cool closing for this session. Dan, it was a pleasure having you with me. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
And I think it was great to get your insights and to get the kind of information from the other side. Let's call it like this.
Yeah.
That is what I really like in WeAreDevelopers, that we have both sides, and we're really trying to bridge this both sides and making the gap smaller and smaller and smaller from day to day. I think that's our mission. That is what we are striving for. And thanks for taking your time. And dear audience, please stay tuned for the upcoming episodes. And it was a pleasure to have you with us, then. Bye-bye. Thank you so much.
Thank you for watching Cappuccino with HR. If you enjoy this kind of conversations, please don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Then you get all this kind of upfront information, your upcoming episodes, and all my nice guests. Cappuccino with HR is brought to you by WeAreDevelopers, Europe's #1 developer community and a leading platform for connecting HR and companies together with developers. If you want to learn more, visit us on WeAreDevelopers.com. Thank you again for watching, and see you next time on Cappuccino with HR.